Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sabo, does the FRA, do you do Pareto analysis, Pareto charts on the causation, or maybe the NTSB? Do you do that analysis of what is the primary causes of these accidents?
Yeah, we do very deep root cause analysis, and in fact, if you take a look at the 43% reduction in accidents we've had over the past decade, it's been by aggressively using the data, the accident data that is available, to be much more strategic in coming up with our solutions.
Can you just kind of rattle off the top 5 categories of causes of rail accidents?
Well, from a broadest standpoint, the number one risk area would be human factors. Okay. Second would be track caused. And combine those two probably are the chief causation for about 72% of all railroad accidents. So, you know, so much of our efforts over the last 5 years have been on drilling down on human factors and track causation, because we believe that gives us the biggest opportunity for continuous safety improvement.
I've heard the word resources used a couple times. I think Ms. Fleming said limited resources, which is true. Do anybody have the information in terms of how much capital expenditure per year is available to the industry? Or how much do they spend on capital improvements?
We can get to that for the record. Perhaps Ed Hamburger on the second panel would be able to address that for the Class 1 railroads, for the private railroads, and certainly we can get it to you for Amtrak and try and get it for MAPTA on the commuter railroads. But it's substantial. Okay.
There's an interesting article, column written by George Will on May 31st. I'd like to enter it into the record.
Without objection.
He's talking about positive train control. The numbers he's using is so far the railroads have spent about $2.7 billion on it. They're estimating somewhere between $10 and $14 billion of CapEx, about $1 billion per year in annual maintenance. He's listing that in 2010 the total capital investments of the railroads are by $11 billion. He's also in this article saying that Cass Sunstein, who is the former administrator of the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, when he's testifying before Congress, talked about positive train control in this way. He said that it is a statutory requirement the Department of Transportation had to issue as a matter of law, even though the monetized benefits are lower than the monetized costs. He said there aren't a lot like that. So I guess in limited resources, I guess I just kind of want to get your evaluation of, as much as we all love the concept of that, are we devoting too many resources, and are we imposing that too quickly? I mean, earlier in the column, he said this was really passed a month after a train accident in California. Very rapid response by Congress. Did we think that thing through well enough, and are we really demanding the railroads to put too much money toward this one, again, potentially life-saving and very wonderful technology, but is that at the expense of other potentially more beneficial technologies or capital expenditures on other safety areas?
There's no question that PTC is a game changer in safety for the industry. When I talk about human factors being the #1 causation for roughly 40% of all railroad accidents, that's exactly what PTC is designed to prevent. And so we have to recognize the tremendous safety benefits. It will, without question, drive down accident rates and lead to that continuous safety improvement. But we also have to be smart about how we implement it. And that's why we're looking to see it implemented as expeditiously as possible while ensuring that it is done safely and reliably. There's a balancing act here, Senator, and we have to make sure that we achieve it, that if we force deployment without having the chance to work the kinks out, we do run the risk of actually making the industry on a short-term basis less safe, as well as gumming up capacity. And so, you know, there's a lot that has to be balanced to make sure that it is done right while also being done expeditiously.
Do you disagree with Cass Sunstein's characterization that the monetized benefits are lower than the monetized costs?
No, he's got the actual figures there, but again, this was a congressional mandate, and so our job was to implement what Congress required of us and do it in the most cost-effective way possible.
But so again, so you're not disputing the fact that this is going to cost more than the benefit? which is not a real good sign for federal regulation. And the problem with that is it is going to cost money. It's going to spend limited resources that may be spent better elsewhere. That's my question.
You know, I don't dispute the numbers that are in the calculation there. They're our numbers. My economist came up with those numbers. But I will also say in regulations of this nature, there are always benefits we believe that are not adequately measured. And let's not dismiss the game-changing impact the PTC can have on railroad safety.
Again, I'm always concerned about unintended consequences, and the unintended consequence I'm concerned about here is money spent with PTC not getting very good bang for the buck relatively. Could that money be spent better elsewhere? And that's really what I was talking about, a Pareto analysis in terms of directing those dollars spent in different areas. And I'm just asking, what other areas would we be spending that money in had you not been directed by Congress to spend it in PTC? Do you understand the question, Mr.? I'll open up to anybody who'd like to respond to that. Are there other areas that the industry would rather spend the money on to improve safety that might be more effective, that might actually have a better benefit than the cost?
Yeah, I think that question would be better answered by the industry. But certainly from our perspective, driving down human factors has to be first and foremost in our minds from a safety regime.
Okay. Ms. Herman, do you have anything to add to that, or just a...
Well, I would certainly defer to the industry to kind of share what they would invest in otherwise, but I will say this is a technology that we've recommended since the 1970s. It's a technology that the federal government has been funding as far as pilot programs for decades, and we know that there will be more accidents that can be prevented. We're investigating accidents right now that could have been prevented by PTC. PTC prevents the most catastrophic accidents, the ones where you have loss of life. And yes, you're right. I think it was the last straw. It finally triggered congressional action was the Metrolink accident that killed 25 in Southern California. We had a texting locomotive engineer who ran a red signal. It was a PTC preventable accident. But we also would like to see PTC prevent accidents that result in major hazmat releases and evacuations from communities and the things that are the most catastrophic. We think that PTC is the solution to that. It is expensive, but it's important.
Could you just name the one area that you might spend money on next then? If this is the number one, what would be number two?
I think I would agree with Administrator Szabo. When I look at the 11 investigations that we have ongoing right now, they basically break down into human factors and track. And so, you know, improving their infrastructure, that is also an issue that the NTSB has focused on. We have 10 items on our most wanted list of transportation safety improvements. PTC is one of them, but so is maintaining the integrity of our nation's infrastructure.
Okay. Well, thank you.
May I add a comment?
Sure.
I think one thing that we're not talking about here is reducing highway rail grade crossings and trespasser accidents. And it actually, if you look at that, it's obviously gone down as well, but it's actually a higher percentage of overall accidents and fatalities. And it's something that is difficult to address, but it really involves, you know, working with multiple stakeholders, but it is something that really has to be tackled. And so I think when you think of rail safety, you have to, you know, really address it on a number of fronts. You know, technology, I think PTC is very promising. Our point is that it has to be installed in a way that ensures that the system functions as intended and is reliable. Our work has shown that there are a number of interrelated challenges that also pose risk and should be considered. And I think other technologies hold promise as well. So from our perspective, we can't overlook reducing highway rail grade crossings, trespasser accidents, and really kind of making sure that PTC is ready for prime time.
Can I just ask what makes for the most dangerous railroad crossing? Is it just traffic flow, or I mean, is there one big cause there? You
know, I would probably defer to Administrator Szabo or Ms. Hirschman, but I think obviously if you have a high traffic area, that certainly poses a risk. But I'm definitely probably not the best person to answer that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's one definitive risk that drives grade crossing accidents. I mean, 50%, more than 50% of them occur at grade crossings that are fully protected with gates and flashing lights and bells. And, you know, really, we're trying to advance the position that the safest grade crossing is one that doesn't exist at all. And we really need to take a look at a more systematic approach, as we've proposed in our budget proposal, at eliminating grade crossings, strategic placement of overpasses and underpasses. And this advances safety for the rail network, for the vehicles, for pedestrians, and improves the fluidity of traffic for all of the above also. And, but the fundamentals in grade crossing safety come back to 3 E's: education, enforcement, and engineering. And so we need to continue to engineer improvements. We need to continue to work with local communities to enforce the laws that are in place. And we need to continue to work with educating drivers to not put themselves at risk by illegally trespassing through a, crossing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Johnson.